you doing, Joss?
Hi, Grant.
Nice to see you, man.
Nice to see you, Jamie.
Hello. Thanks for coming to Yap to me, man. This is the first time I've ever recorded a podcast with video, ever.
Nice.
So thanks for being willing to come and Yap, man.
And what are we calling it?
I honestly don't know. I mean, a couple of weeks ago, or months ago, I've been thinking this for months. I was thinking like Scots of St. Louis as a decent title.
Yeah.
But basically, I've been here for 6 years now in St. Louis, and I've met some really fantastic people who just happen to be from Scotland, as well as folks from all over the world. But I just thought, I really want to document, record, capture the stories of the amazing people that I meet here. Because I think this is a bit random, to use a word, the fact that we're Scottish in St. Louis, of all the places we could be. Have you done this kind of thing before?
Yeah, a few different times since I've been in St. Louis. Especially I've been involved with a non-profit for the best part of a decade now, so been many podcasts on that and different news sections. So
Brilliant. And how long have you been in St. Louis for?
So I've been coming here for, let's see, we're in 2026, full time. It's coming up September, will be my decade. But I've been coming to St. Louis since October 2014, so 12 years.
Wow. Did you know anything about St. Louis before you moved here? Why St. Louis, or why not St. Louis? As we should say, why not?
Yeah. So I knew where St. Louis was, and I knew Missouri. I'd lived in the States previously, over on the East Coast. But I'd never stopped. I went East Coast, West Coast, some places in between, especially I was traveling around, but I'd never been to Missouri. So I knew where it was, but I didn't really know much about it other than the Mississippi ran through it, and that things had happened, but I didn't know what had happened, So it was very much, all right, that's where I'm moving. So my ex-wife moved here. She was studying at Washington University, and that brought me here. So the only thing I knew really about St. Louis was I knew it was like the gateway to the West, and I knew there was a huge part with the Louisiana Purchase and how everything west of Mississippi from there. I was, aware of that. I'd known that it was a city similar to Detroit that had hit a decline, and I knew that Stan Kroenke owned the Rams and had moved them because I'm an Arsenal fan. So that's about it. That's all I knew about St. Louis.
Wow, super interesting moment for Arsenal at the moment. My brother's an Arsenal fan too, and I hope he's win the league. I hope he's win the Champions League as well. Yeah. But he seems convinced that disaster, it might just be around the corner. Glorious failure, like what they talk about Scotland often facing, although not now. Yeah. Not at this moment.
Yeah, no, I know it. All teams are riding high at the moment. Scotland's riding high. And then my Scottish team, St. Johnstone, they just won the championship. So it's good days. I'm actually hoping, I feel like a Pollyanna. I'm like, Arsenal are going to do it. Saints are going to win the league. Arsenal's going to win the league. Scotland's going to win the World Cup. Good things coming free. We're winning it.
God, I remember I had the privilege of being with you and a group of our fellow Scots when Scotland were playing Denmark. That last game that qualified us for the World Cup. And honestly, at that time, that day, I can't remember feeling as good as that.
It's certainly, I would be lying if I said it wasn't up there with childbirth and getting married and all that good stuff. I mean, it's a euphoric moment that I revisit often, and I think about where I went to watch the World Cup, and there's been several times that I think about watching it with all you guys, because we watched the whole qualifying campaign together. And I know a lot of you are going to Boston. I'm like, I should go to Boston, be with the family. And it's a beautiful thing how some of us have amalgamated together over the years from these painful moments of watching Scotland miss on qualifications or mess qualifications up, or like this one, absolutely glorious. We have a golden generation, and we finally made a World Cup. So yeah, it's mental, like.
I'm so happy. I've honestly felt like as soon as Scotland qualified, I thought, I'm going to have a great year. This is going to be a great year.
You wouldn't like to pin so much hope on a national team, but I mean, for once we've done it. And we did it without a playoff. And I mean, I think that's a testament to yeah. I think we should be happy. And I think you should be thinking we're going to have a good year because, I mean, we're playing with house money, as they say.
Genuinely, like, I'm so happy about it. I've been here in St. Louis for 6 years now.
Yeah.
I've met so many lovely people, and I do every day. But it's like wonderful most of the time to meet folk from back home.
Yeah.
Like, what's your experiences been like meeting other Scots in St. Louis and the US?
There was definitely a spell when I first moved here. I was very isolated to kind of that WashU parameter, and I'd got involved with a non-profit straight away. So I had some experience of meeting Americans, and my experience of Scottish people was I had my wife at the time. She was Scottish, and then we didn't really meet anyone else. We'd occasionally, and I remember, times like I was in Aldi one time and I heard this bird and she had an Irish accent, and I just walked up to her and I was like, I'm Scottish, and we just hugged. And she was like, I haven't even met anyone else from back home. And like, there was a point where, apart from family coming over, I think it was about 2 years I'd been here and I didn't meet anyone else from Scotland. And it's a weird place. I mean, it wasn't until I started really, I'd been going to the Amsterdam Tavern where we met to watch the games, and that was when I really started to maybe make more pals from Scotland. But before that, it was like just a token Scot. It's very funny, and like you say, it's so coincidental to end up in that same city, in St. Louis, and then start to make pals, because there's been so many times where I'm like, I'm the only one. And then you think, no, I'm not. There's tons of us here. And there is enough to make up a good number. But you could just live your whole life here. I think the funniest time I met someone from Scotland was, I was in a restaurant, and I was over in West County. I was in a Thai restaurant, and I said to my missus, I was like, I hear someone. I was like, they're from Corstorphine. And I just knew, I could even pinpoint the accent. And then I was like, who is it? And I sat there and I ate and ate and ate. 10 minutes later, I was like, I've got to chance it. And I get up and I walk to another table and I just say to this woman, excuse me, you don't happen to be from Scotland, are you? I heard someone talking, and she says, I'm from Edinburgh. And I was like, oh, cool, I'm from Crieff. And she says, oh, I love the Crieff Hydro. And I was like, I grew up in the Crieff Hydro. And I was like, where are you from in Edinburgh? She's like, I'm from Corstorphine. And I'd nailed it.
I mean,
so good.
Even being, 4,000 miles away, you can still pinpoint accents perfectly. For me, it's like, thank God, I have met some lovely folk from Scotland, because it centres me. Like, I feel like I'm in a movie. I have done for the past 6 years. I mean, with the whole COVID thing and coming here and all the politics stuff at the best of the time, I do feel like I'm in a movie. I feel, even saying movie, I wouldn't say movie back home. It's a film. But it feels very surreal, and I do feel like I feel grounded when I meet other Scots, which is nice.
It is easy to be swept up. I think the question that most Americans will ask us is, what's the culture shock like? And once you've been here long enough, like you say, you start using the Americanisms. You say, maybe you have to, when in Rome, you have to do as Romans do, and that's fine. But you can pinch yourself sometimes, and you think you're in Grand Theft Auto, you think you're in these movies. You go on holiday back to Scotland and you think, it's pretty normal here. Everyone's pretty normal and pretty nice. And then you come to America and there is a ton of nice people here, but there's also a ton of people where you're like, it's kind of mad. This doesn't seem real.
The extremes are extreme. Like, and it's weird when I go back to Ayr, which I love, and it is and always will be home. It feels very pedestrian in a nice way and safe, and I don't have to worry about getting shot or carjacked or anything like that. Whereas here, I'm always thinking that's a genuine possibility, and I hate to go there so quickly in our conversation, but with St. Louis, it feels unavoidable, because even in the last 2 years, within a mile and a half of where I live, there's been so many shootings and all the rest of it. I'm just like, oh my God. It's very hard to wrap my head around that as a reality, that happens.
Yeah, I mean, I've been in an attempted carjacking. I stopped at a red light, and then someone tried to get me. When I looked to the side, I was like, oh, that guy's about to get out of his car. He's holding a gun at my face, and I was like, no, not today. And I just drove away, and then I've been at a gas station, and you know, I'm getting petrol in my car, and then again, I just see some boy and he's trying to steal some lassie's wallet, and the next thing you know, he's shooting. And there's been several incidents. I mean, it's kind of crazy and kind of surreal. My two, you know, three, you know, where do I even begin with the stories of gun violence that I've experienced living here? So yeah, it's very unavoidable. I mean, I've seen people being murdered. I've seen people have shootouts, and I've experienced people being robbed at gunpoint. I mean, it's wild. It's absolutely wild. And it's a very prominent time as well, actually. It just 1996, so we just hit the 30-year anniversary of Dunblane, the Dunblane shooting, which, being from Crieff, was only 10 miles away from Crieff, and it was the same age group as me at the time. I think I was 8, but it was 5 and 6 year olds. But I knew the people who were around there. I knew the Murray brothers at that point, and their mum was the PE teacher, who was meant to be going into school that day. So it's kind of surreal to think how Scotland as a nation, and the UK, sort of said, no, we're not going to allow this to be a thing. And then America is just, it's the size of it. You just can't control it. It's uncontrollable. People can go to Westminster, people can go to Holyrood, and they can protest, but the whole of America can't get to DC. They can always stop that from happening. So they can't have a protest here in the way that we can. And I think we're never going to get rid of guns because of that point.
It's really sad, to think that is a reality. The genie will never be put back in the bottle, and it's like, anything could happen, and it still wouldn't change. It's enshrined in the Constitution, and it's such a hot topic. But, I mean, for God's sake, I wouldn't give 99% of the folk back home a baseball bat to stroll down the town with. Yeah. No offence. Can you tell us about that non-profit? Because I learned about the place that you're going to talk about not long after moving here, and I thought, that sounds amazing. Wow, look at that, videos. And I never went. And I'm so gutted that I never went.
I know. So yeah, we had our non-profit is Laborious Urban Art Spaces, and the place itself was called Skate Laborious. It was a German Catholic church. Many people give it the title of cathedral. It wasn't a cathedral. I think you need to seat an archbishop to be a cathedral. We didn't have one. And they came in the 1800s. They actually made a place. There is a town in Illinois called St. Labori, and that was the actual Latin, St. Labori. And then they came over to St. Louis and they made St. Laborious. And they're not identical churches, but they're very similar in stature. In that time, mid 18th century, they started construction in the 1860s. They had to make their own blacksmith. They had to make their own brickyard. They milled everything and made all their bricks and made all their nails on site in that area. And what they did was they built a parcel. They built the sanctuary, the convent, the rectory, and a school. And the school was actually added a little bit later. That came last. The church obviously being the most important, it came first with the rectory and the convent. So they had a place of worship, and that was finished in, I think it was 1882-ish. And the Catholics used it. Funnily enough, a lot of my friends now, American friends, their parents actually practiced their Catholicism, and then they ended up, they went to school there as well. And it's crazy, people telling me about them going to school. And then the Catholics got in the decline, as St. Louis did, and then in the early 1990s they abandoned the building. They gave the building to one of my friends because they basically, the convent was a non-profit, it was a women's shelter, and they were like, they'd got it off the Archdiocese, and they were like, what do we do with this church? We can't, it's 65-foot ceilings, 170-foot bell tower, it's mental. And then my pal got a hold of it, and he was looking for something to do, and he'd always been into street art and graffiti and everything like that, and he was like, we could build some ramps in here, people, skateboarders. What skateboarders are kind of synonymous with is they'll clean up spots so that they can skate. So they came in, and in turn for labor of like helping restore the building, they could build a skate park. So the sanctuary very quickly turned into a skate park. And that was actually in 2014 they started that. When I started coming, at the same time my friends were building a skate park in St. Louis. It's crazy, it's the biggest city in the US that doesn't actually have a city-built skate park, which is mad. Considering it had, now what I'll get onto is Saint Laborious turned into Skate Laborious. And we changed the sanctuary into it grew and grew and grew. The skateboarders took over and we built a skate park within the sanctuary itself. And we'd throw raves in the basement because the walls were 4 foot thick. So we soundproofed the windows, you couldn't hear anything outside apart from this heartbeat, poof, poof, poof. There was punk shows, and one time someone said to us, hey, can we rent a place for 6 weeks? And they did an immersive theater production. They set up for 4 weeks. They rehearsed, they set the space up, and then they brought people in for 2 weeks. And it was so cool. They went and they picked people up somewhere in St. Louis. They didn't know where the venue was, and they weren't allowed to know where the venue was. So they went and they got on a coach, and they took the coach over, and nobody would ever drive to North City out of those people. They're going to see this, it was a fairly expensive show. And they come into our bar in the basement, so that was kind of cool. It lended itself to it. And many of them probably didn't even know there's a church with a skate park. So then they're in the basement. They don't know where they are. And then we're there and we're serving them drinks and everything. So it was kind of cool. It was a 2-for-1. Hey, do you want to run a bar on an event we've hosted? Aye, no bother. So we're slinging them drinks and everything. And then all of a sudden, the lights start to flicker. And there's like bass rumbling. And then people are like, what's going on? And the play starts. And it was a 21st century rendition of the name of the Shakespeare play that Scottish people should not speak the name of. It must not be said. So it was very cool that then, they didn't know there was someone Scottish involved, and then all of a sudden they had a real life Scot involved in it. So their first clue was actually, that there's a Scottish person amongst it, and we were encouraged to mingle with them. So, and the actors were in the bar with them as well, and they didn't know. So that was incredible. And then they split them up, and it was like a war zone. And they split them up, and then they put them in 5 different groups, and then they went through the whole play, 5 different groups, and none of them crossed over at any point. So nobody got the same play. It was incredible. And yeah, we filmed movies in there, and we filmed music videos, and it was, people would try and pull the wool over our eyes. And like one time someone said, I've got my friend in town, can we come into the church, and it's someone we know, and it's, okay, no problem. But there's always one of us there. And, we have to let them in. And my friend says, hey, you got to come here quick. 9 Inch Nails are here. And somebody's just said, my pals are in town. And they've got 9 Inch Nails there. And we're like, you can't even tell the people that owns the building that, it was crazy. And needless to say, though, I get the phone call and all of us are there, and we're meeting the band. Because you're not going to come and steal the glamour of our building and let them. And we were in their next albums. They'd taken pictures. We're in their next album sleeve for their, and they were, this person's trying to say, we'll keep it low key. It's like, at least tell us. And there'd be stuff like that all the time.
Did you ever think that you'd be living in St. Louis and hanging out with 9 Inch Nails in a skate park arts venue that you've helped to create? And did that ever seem likely?
It's funny that question. I guess secretly inside my head, I've always had this passion for extreme sports, inline skating and skateboarding. And I really liked athletics. And I think to touch on what we're saying about the extreme polarities of Americans is like, they're really good at being bad, but they're really good at being good. They don't know limits, So when they get into something, if they want to get into athletics or that, they're amazing, So I'd watch this powerhouse of a sporting nation, and especially skateboarding, the hub of it is on the west coast of America. So just really being a small town boy in Crieff, I would be watching videos of American skateboarders and everything like that, and I'm watching athletics, and there is other great nations, but they're a great nation for those things. And I think I always knew that like I would lead there in some way. I don't know if I would use the word quite profound as like it was my destiny, but I'd certainly manifested that I've always wanted to be involved in skateboarding, and I've always wanted to be surrounded by this level of ambition to do things, and it's fun to be a part of. So I didn't see it being in St. Louis, especially having lived in the East Coast, having been in Philadelphia and New York, and I didn't, I thought maybe, and I even, I could have ended up in the West Coast with my ex-wife, but, in San Fran, which is another major hub for it, but St. Louis is just so much fun for it that I ended up staying here. So.
Do you think there's any kind of marked differences between the Scottish psyche and American psyche, if there is such a thing?
It has to go without saying that I think Scottish people, we have a tendency to be, I would use the term miserable bastards. It's very Scottish, but we're not. I think it's topical to yesterday. I met Craig Ferguson, the lad who's walking from LA to Boston. I met him on his jaunt, and he's doing so good. And I was talking to him about, had he noticed anything different in the way that Americans approach him, and I was saying, while we make the statement miserable bastards, we're walking through there with him, and I said to him, I listened to what he answered, and I said, see, I think you are more likely to find, I think Scotland has a bigger percentage of dreamers who will follow their dreams, and I think America has a good percentage of dreamers, but they just get shot down in them. And the way that we can, in skateboarding, I always say, I skateboard like I have free healthcare, because I grew up in a country free healthcare. So I skateboard like it doesn't matter. Whereas my pals say, why are you not scared of falling over? And I'm like, because I could hurt myself in Scotland. Okay, here I can, but it's going to cost me a lot more money. So they always grew up with their parents saying, don't do that, don't get hurt, don't break your leg. Oh, my parents made me quit skateboarding. So I think what I see is we have less inhibition and less kickback for really going for overly ambitious things. So you do hear about Scottish people going out and just doing incredible things, like share a home time with Hugh McGregor. He went the long way down and the long way around. He's just like, okay, yeah, sure, he had the money, but what he chose to do with that money is he went all the way from Scotland to the bottom of South Africa. It's an incredible journey to watch, and I think while people from every nation of the world dream and see out dreams, I think Scotland really, we do produce good explorers and good adventurers, and people are very optimistic in their ability to really go out and seek something great. I feel like we're happy to go out and make a legacy.
It's interestingly such a small country, and this is a cliche, but such a big kind of cultural footprint around the world, and part of the Industrial Revolution to a huge extent, in the Scottish Enlightenment. There's so many amazing scientists, cultural figures, creatives have come from Scotland, and it's a weird one, because I was going to say to you, I was going to assume in my mind, I'm almost thinking we're too cynical. I suppose it's all dependent on you as a person.
Yes, I think what I would say from that, I understand. I actually fully understand what you're saying with that, and I can get it. But I feel like when you are a force and you come to somewhere that's kind of lawless like this, there's nothing going to stop you. So then that's the thing is, when I was in Scotland, people kept on saying, in skateboarding, you'll get kicked back from the council. They'll not allow this. My peers are saying to me, you can't do that. And then I come here and I meet someone who's like, I dare you to do that. I dare you to do it. And I'm like, nah, say no more. I'll do it. I'll keep doing it. And these people would watch me be like, this is what I want to create, and there's nobody going to stop me, and nobody did. And you have to just be, I think that's what I got to experience was there's a real game here to the US, and I was like, okay, I'll learn the rules and I'll play their game. And that's how the rich get richer here, is they let us play the same rules though, and you just have to be savvy about it, and you have to be a little bit streetwise, but you also have to be American and be a habitual line stepper. The rules are there, but it doesn't mean you follow them.
Well, I definitely know we were talking about the council. I mean, I come from Ayr, and I always had ideas about doing things and got support to do some of them, but I think in general the populace are kind of disengaged from the local government, but there is this vibe of things are the way they are, who are we to bring change or innovation, and they're almost waiting for the local council or the government to bring these changes, whereas here, like, I personally feel a greater sense of agency than I ever have done, and part of it will be that kind of who's going to stop me sense, because there's no one telling me what to do, and there's no one drawing the lines or expectations, and I feel here, I don't really feel any fear. I feel like if I've got an idea, let's go for it, and that's lovely. That's very free.
But there is a lack of governance here, and that's the duality of it. I think what you said there is, I've spoke about this to other people, is like, I think Scottish people are too dependent on waiting for the word go.
Have your perceptions of Scotland changed any since you've been here, since you've been living here?
Yeah, it's a funny one because I only go back every couple of years or so. My perception has changed in that I think I see more. I always seen freedom. I love to be outside. I like the right to roam, and as long as you don't leave a trace, you can go anywhere you want. It's bra. But I think maybe ultimately it is definitely piggybacking off what you just said. It's like, I feel like mentally people don't see the amount of freedom that they have, and they're not using it enough. And I kind of go back there. One of my friends, childhood friends, he's always saying, nobody ever wants to do stuff, and I'm like, I know. And then when I'm back there, I'm like, you want to do stuff, but all my other pals are kind of just, and they don't see how good they've got it, is I think what I go back with. But I had that before I moved here. I'd lived in Italy, and I'd lived in France and Austria and stuff, and I'd traveled, and I'd always seen that, like, when I went back, I was like, people should just, like, coming from Crieff, there's no police there. We could just do what we want. And meet people from cities, and they're like, oh, the police. I'm like, the police aren't going to do anything. They didn't care about you.
Certainly a lot different police situation from St. Louis to Scotland, that's for sure.
Very strange. Yeah.
Very interesting. Is there anything that surprised you about the US, or anything any perceptions you had before coming here that changed or proved to be wrong, or anything you've been surprised by?
I think there is a blanket stereotype of the gun violence. It's not everywhere. Actually, I can't say that. It is everywhere, but it is avoidable, and you can live your life here without ever seeing it. St. Louis, more difficult, but I love to road trip, and there is just some, exquisitely beautiful places, and it's the last thing you ever think about is, gun violence when you're in those places. So I feel like you just got to find that right pocket. Even in St. Louis, there's people that have never seen it, and they never will, and I'm pleased that they never will. You don't want to live your life in fear, but sometimes, like we started the conversation with, it just doesn't seem real. No, it just doesn't seem real, But they just, their fascination with money is just, the land of the fees is what I call it. It is bonkers. It's absolute bonkers. Me and my sister always have a joke about food, the cost of food. You'll know yourself. St. Louis is quite cheap, but you go anywhere, Boston is diabolical. And I was there with her 2 summers ago, we went on a wee family holiday there, and she's looking at the wraps or something like that. She's like, oh, these are 99p in Tesco's for 15 of them or something. We're looking at 5 of them, and they're like $7. She's like, I'm no remortgaging my house for some wraps, But that's the reality we live in, It's wild.
Are you self-employed? Mm-hmm. For me, I've got a job at the moment, but I do freelance stuff on the side, and certainly when I was in Scotland, it was freelance stuff towards the end before I moved here, and I was always very shy to talk about money. Yeah. Always very shy. I found it very embarrassing, whereas here, there's no qualms in talking about money. Yeah. Nobody's got any qualms about it, really, which, and I don't know if that was a social thing or if it was just a me thing, but I was always embarrassed to talk about money. But here, everything's got a price, everything costs, and it's like
Everything can be bought.
everything can be bought, exactly.
No, I mean, I work in construction, and I've been doing my own thing for years now. I've not really worked for anyone since I've been here. If I have, it's been like as a subcontractor or anything. It's on my own terms. So yeah, no, the conversation about money and everything like that. Like I had people calling me today, and it's very open and it's very. This is what you're going to get, and this is what I'm going to take from it. This is what I'm going to charge, and I'm going to give you it. And you got to be like, that's. And again, the land of the fees. I'm like, man, as a middleman, you're making 40%, and it's not right. And I do. That's something I often wonder, because I didn't work in construction when I lived in Scotland, and doing it here, I'm like, is it as mental back there as it is here? Because there's absolute inflation going on, and I'm like, are people fleecing you that bad in Scotland as well? I just don't think it would happen. I think you'd be murdered. I think you'd be called out about it, and people would they'd be on Facebook talking about it, somebody's nan would be calling you it. But like here, it's just accepted. Yeah, it is a funny one.
No, I'm not embarrassed to talk about money anymore, and I don't know why I was before. I think it's because I play music, so I almost felt guilty for getting paid. Whereas now I think, of course, I should get bloody paid. If you're doing a job, if you're doing a service.
Entertainment is a very. I feel like there's a culture shift there coming here where money is more spoken about, but I also think it's a generational shift, because still there is with our line of work, it's hard to find people. But I talk to other people as well, and some of my pals are saying like they won't apply for a job where they can't see what the money is. They just don't apply, and that's becoming a real problem for employers now. Is because they're not showing you what it is, because they want to talk women down. They want to, if it's a guy with more experience, it's sad. But like, I really enjoy that. As a collective, we're having more of a backbone and talking about money, because it should be spoken about so that corporations, especially over here, aren't taking advantage. My wife, I always was saying to her that she should be standing up to her employees a bit more and speaking to her work colleagues to see what they're getting paid, and because there's going to be different shelves to pay there, and you want to make sure you're on the highest one. So.
Definitely. I saw this thing on the internet today. It was like basically comparing wages, salaries in the so-called UK and the USA, and it was interesting to watch that. Obviously, like it seems like you get paid a lot more here, but then obviously you get your healthcare costs. But
yeah, no, it is interesting. I've compared salaries to my sister, who's a biology teacher, and my brother-in-law, and he's a PE teacher. Both been at it for decades now, so they've went their way up the scales, and it's mad. But like you say, you are comparing apples to bananas when you do that with the way healthcare works and everything. But I do say to people, I genuinely think I can make more money easier in America than I can in the UK. I feel like, because we have national healthcare, it does change a lot in what the movement of money looks like. Because, and it's weird though, because people really do, if you're that's why I won't work for anyone here. The money that people try to pay you here to work a desk job or something, it's not enough. It's absolutely not enough. And something has to be done about it before it hits crisis levels. But it's very interesting how there is the figures aren't real, You just talk to people back home about making 6 figures doing something, and they'd be like, yo, what? You make 30, 40,000 doing a pretty good job in Scotland, and over here you might make 100 grand doing the same one, and it's crazy,
Genuinely. Have you got, where's your favourite place to go in St. Louis for food? Where's the best places for grub?
So since I had a big shift when I moved to America, like we spoke about already, the food, so expensive, but I also don't trust a lot of things that are in it. When I moved here, I noticed a downturn in my health, and I actually went fully vegan at that point. So now I only eat at places where, you know, I don't even care if it's organic, whatever, but I eat, you know, vegan, so it's just plants. I really like, there's Lona's Little Eats over in California. It's absolutely brand new. Mezcarin, the Ethiopian place on Grand as well, that's absolutely banging. And then where I live out in the county in Bridgeton and Maryland Heights, we've got a lot of Indians out there, so I mean, you'll know yourself. You miss a good curry house. Can't wait to go back to Perth and get a curry.
Right time. Yeah. Have you spent much time in this place, the Scottish Arms, where we are just now? Have you been here much?
Yeah. So I haven't. This is my first time in here, Scottish Arms 2.0. But before, yeah, I lived a lot closer when I lived in University City. I would come here, and I actually built a 13 townhouse block just down the street from here on Sarah Street, so we'd come up here for lunch as well every so often. It was pretty good, so big fan. Yeah, nice to get some home essentials.
Oh, absolutely. Have you got any advice to anybody in Scotland that's thinking about moving to the US, or, you know, has an ambition to come here one day?
Yeah, it's not as scary as you think it is, that's for sure. It's just not as scary. You've got to be prepared. You've got to have some money behind you, or you've got to have some sort of solid plan. But you can have a really successful life here, and you can meet a lot of great people, and you can do a lot of incredible things. I mean, you should want to explore it and not listen to the stereotypes that it holds, because I feel like while they are profoundly true, there are also hugely misconceptions. There's so many nice people here, and if you are thinking about coming over and working or coming over and studying, the education is incredible, and the job opportunities are they're rife. I mean, there's great things if you're educated, and even if you find a way into a mundane job, you know, if you're a carpenter or a joiner, as we call it, or a plumber or something like that, you can come over here, and I would tell someone to do it. There's no point in spending your days reading a one-page book. You know, write a new chapter, explore the world a little bit. Even if it's not here, go somewhere else, you know, and live a little. I definitely would say that you can live a good life here.
Absolutely, you're proof of it. You're proof of it. Yeah. What would you say to anybody in the US that's thinking about going to Scotland for the first time?
Didn't miss the Highlands. Don't go to Glasgow and Edinburgh. Yeah, it's important. It's definitely it's important that they do explore the Central Belt. I mean, that houses like 90% of our population or whatever. But it is just as essential to go up the West Coast, go into the Isle of Skye. I mean, they're phenomenal. I love going to the Rockies. I love going to the Appalachian Mountains. Last year I got the Pacific Northwest and BC and Canada. You know, I love the hills, but nothing over here's hit the same as, you know, you're driving up the West Coast and you're hugging that Caledonian highway, lock after lock, and it's amazing, absolutely amazing, and I do miss it. Fort William and like the Ballachulish area, and even there's like Santa Bay. Oh God, there's so many good places that people can go and see. Do the North Coast 500. I mean, it's essential. You know.
I need to do it. Every time I go back, I think, bloody hell, it's so nice to come back as a tourist, and I think to myself, I wish I'd explored this more than I had. And I'd done a wee bit of exploring because I was playing in pubs and hotels through the Highlands, you know, going to really interesting places. But it's always nice to go back. But I don't know, have you got plans to go back for a holiday this year or next year?
Yes, so this summer, I'm actually heading over, going from July right until middle of August. Make sure, that's definitely another good point, is the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. Absolutely banging. Yeah, I made sure I'd make it for that. I wanted to see my niece on her summer holidays, but then I also just wanted to stay long enough to do that. And I'll get to go. I'll be going over in where I grew up, Crieff, there's also Comrie right beside it. That's where my dad's from. And there's the Comrie Fortnight. As a lot of these little towns have, they'll have their summer fairs and everything like that. But Comrie, last week of July, first week of August, first weekend in August is like the town float parade and all and like that. And so my favourite thing is I do enjoy like the Scottish sense of humour. My pals will send me things here and they'll be like, you know, an average day in Ireland or an average day in Scotland, and they'll be showing you little snippets from these things, and I'm like, oh man, this should never have leaked. This is terrible.
I do miss that, some of the twisted humour, man. It's like most folk I meet are very nice and lovely, but I like a bit of twisted something.
Oh, no, you got dark. I think Scottish people do have a very dark sense of humour in comparison to Americans. I think we're very, very bleak in our ability to have humour in that. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that. That'll be so good. And then I'll be going to the Isle of Skye. Yeah.
Man, I've only been once properly at the Isle of Skye. That was 2 years ago at Christmas. Prior to that, I would go to sing at Saucy Mary's in Kyleakin.
Oh, excellent.
And that's as far as I'd went.
Oh, really?
Until 2 years ago, and I don't know how far up we went or whether that was near Carbost or not. I have no idea. I can't remember. My brother drove. I slept. But we stayed in this wee cottage. It was stunningly beautiful, desolate, pissing the rain. But what a lovely Christmas it was. It was just so nice.
Yeah, no, the Isle of Skye is, I mean, I can't speak highly enough about it. There's a whole, it's called a Feldspar Cave. A flowstone cave. It's called Spar Cave. And it's tidal. The Victorians ruined it. But they had stalactites to stalagmites making full columns, you know. And when you go in there, one of you has to have a flashlight and you can take a photo, and it's like an acid trip. It's just like this crazy calcium carbonate stone everywhere. And yeah, they went and they took it all. And what's crazy though is once you take it out and it dries, it just disintegrates. It becomes Tums, you know, and you're like, oh mate, what'd you do that for? So they ruined it, but it's still beautiful. There's still enough of it there. And then I've walked the north to south Skye on the Skye Trail. It's a beautiful place. I was very fortunate. That's the one thing I don't regret about my time in Scotland is I spent so much time outside. I did 75 or something with the Munros, and I was always just out exploring. It was just like sometimes I'd finish work on a Friday and then like I've said it before, Santa Bay. Santa Bay is the most westernly bay in the United Kingdom. And I would just drive, and if I left, you know, in the summer we'd get like the 10:30 sunset. So then, you know, I would leave. It'd take 5 hours from Crieff. 5 hours in Scotland is a long time, you know? And that's because once you get in near Fort William, you take this little ferry across. It's tiny. You go across there and you just boost it along this road. And the speed limit's like 20 miles an hour. And it's just like, it's a one-track road. And you'll meet someone, you'll be reversing for 2 miles. It's wild. But like, you go out there, teal turquoise water, white sand, and it's like, it's amazing. And it's so, you know, it's west. So then you start to see like Eeg and Rum and everything like that. Their lighthouses coming on, and it's just sensational. And like, that's what I did with my time. I was like, and that's what I mean is, I watch people and I'm like, all I'm doing here is, they'll be like, oh, you went to the Grand Canyon. I'm like, you should go up to like, you know, anywhere. You should go to Ullapool. Check it out. It's incredible, you know? Yeah.
That is a weird one, people taking it for granted when it is accessible as it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it's so easy to go outside. No one with a gun, you walk over any field you want, you know, and it's bra. It's absolutely bra. Yeah, I can't wait to show my kids some more of Scotland. It's gonna be good. Especially, even though I've been once before already, my son's named after part of the Dunkeld Hermitage, if you've ever heard of it. It's like a walk. Basically, people, kind of like the Bush family here, people were coming from Edinburgh and whatnot, going up to Inverness. and he wanted something nice to look at. So they built beside Dunkeld, they built this walk, and it's big tree country. It's the biggest trees in the whole UK in that area as well. And they built a turret on the side of a waterfall, and then there's like a couple of bridges going over it as well. And you can go and see the salmon leaping there. And it's called Ossian's Hall of Mirrors, and there's Ossian's Cave, and that's what I named my son after, is that area, you know. So get to take him there again, and he'll be, it's my cave.
Named after him. That's gorgeous. I think it was 2 trips ago. I went with my dad and my brother, and we were in Dunkeld. We got some lunch at the Tay Bank, and we're just watching the river. We're just like, this is just so perfect. Lovely.
Yeah, I think if I ever moved back to Scotland, Dunkeld's pretty high up there on where I would live. I grew up very close to there, and it's just awesome. Absolutely fantastic part of the world.
Well, is there anything you want to share additionally with the world? Any final thoughts? Any plugs?
I think we have to, before we do that, I think we have to talk about how important Scotland's been to St. Louis. So,
that's a very good point.
We, being Scottish, I have read up on some of the history of St. Louis, and one of the most influential figures actually is Robert Campbell. He went over to the Rockies, and it was in the industrial era. So he'd been in Scotland, plied his trades, worked in factories, done whatever. He went over to the Rockies and he fur traded. Then he came back over to St. Louis, and he was here in, I think it was the later part of the 1800s. But this man, he became everything. And I don't know if you know where it is. There's actually the Campbell House, and it's down by Union Station. And I mean, that's Robert Campbell. He was a powerhouse. He basically ran St. Louis at one point. You know, everything went through him. He ran the dry goods, and he ran the fur trading. And at that point, you know, he was working with, I think the names of them were Pierre Laclede's Landing, and Auguste Chateau, or Chateau, as Americans butcher it. And but he worked with them as well, and they were shipping all this stuff, all the fur back to St. Louis. So while he is an incredibly influential figure, and I'd also like to give him a shout out for ruining Missouri, because they cut down all the trees and they took all the animals away. And it's still very green, but goodness me, they definitely left their mark on the climate here. Yeah, I think it's fascinating that you know, we have as well, there's Glasgow Village. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Glasgow Village was owned by the Glasgow families, and they are Ulster Scots, you know, Scots-Irish, and they were also incredibly influential, and they were later, the first guy that moved over, he was around that same time as Robert Campbell, but his family stayed around. Robert Campbell's, it seemed to fizzle out, but the Glasgow's actually right up at that subdivision was only built in the 1950s, so we're only talking, you know, post-World War II. And then everything, it's amazing. I remember the first time I stumbled across it and looking on the map, and I'm like, man, Glen Erin, Glengarry, and I'm like, that's the same as my nana's like scheme in Scotland. That was the same name as the roads. Like, I'd go to Glengarry Road, and it was on Glen Erin Road, and I was just like, this is hilarious. And I found out, no, they're Scottish, and that's what gave it the name.
I love that. I often wonder if St. Louisans are aware of the origin of all these places with very Scottish names. It's bizarre. Yeah. Like, I'm sure near Washoe there's an Aberdeen Avenue or something like that. There is Aberdeen Avenue, and actually, fun fact for you. So, more Scottish history in this one as well. So on Aberdeen Ave, Schlafly Bottle Works. Dan Schlafly was a lawyer, and he has a wife called Sheena, and she came over from Aberdeen, and they live on Aberdeen Ave, and it was through my ex-wife. Their son went to St. Andrews, and she met their son, and then she came to St. Louis, and the son found out, and then was like, oh, my mum lives here, whatever. Dan Schlafly is the lawyer that managed to successfully fight companies like Budweiser and create craft brewing to be a bigger thing in the early 90s. So actually, without, you know, and I always give credit to the wife, without, you know, the home that he had, he wouldn't have maybe had that fight, and Schlafly really opened up this whole craft brewing boom, which then, you know, it shows you how the tides work, because then there was a craft boom in Scotland as well, and that's thanks to someone
that's keeping a guy happy in in St. Louis. So, you know, very small world, but yeah.
We'll need to do like an actual walking tour through all these Scottish places in St. Louis.
That'd be very fun. Glasgow Ave. There is actually Glasgow Ave after the Glasgow families.